This is the trellis stitch. You're going to start by outlining the shape that you want to fill with a back stitch all the way around. And now I'm bringing my thread up on the top back stitch over there on the right, and I'm going to work across the first row. So I'm going underneath the first back stitch on the right, taking my needle under the working thread and over it, so it's inside the loop of the thread that's laid out there, and pulling through. So again, if you lay your thread down in the shape of a C on your fabric, you can just go underneath the back stitch and inside the loop and pull through. This is the same thing as wrapping your thread counterclockwise around your needle. I just find it easier to lay the thread on the fabric so you don't have to go through that wrapping motion every time. So there we are, and we're going to pull that through, and that's 3 stitches. So again, under the back stitch, inside the loop, and pull through. Probably you'll be able to work it a lot faster than what you see here in the video, and I'm angling my needle to the left, to the lower left there, but that's not really necessary. It's just easier when you're filming. So under the back stitch, inside the loop, and pull it through. Notice that between each loop stitch there's a little bridge of thread, and that bridge of thread is important because that's where you're going to pick up your next row, and we'll see that here in a second. So now I'm going underneath the last back stitch, inside the loop, and pulling through. Now I'm ready to end this row. So to end the row, I'm going to take my needle down into that back stitch right there, and actually I'm going right behind it, but you could split the back stitch. You can go straight into it if you want, and then I'm coming up right behind the next back stitch down, about halfway in the middle of that back stitch. Okay, so for the second row, we're going to go back in the other direction from left to right, and this time we're going to lay the thread down pointing to the right, and you're going to pick up the bridge stitch. That little bridge between the 2 loops is where your needle's going to go down, and you're going to pull it through. So again, you want to lay your thread down kind of in the shape of a G here, and then inside the hole between the 2 loops, picking up that little bridge, and into the loop of your working thread and pull it through. This is the same thing as wrapping your thread clockwise around your needle. So under the stitch in the first row, inside the loop, and pull it through. Trellis stitch makes an interesting filling because you can pack it very tightly by working with a relatively tight tension on your stitches and get a really solid fill, or you can work it a little bit looser, and as you work down your shape you can pull the threads that you've already done, and that will create kind of an open work look. It'll make the holes between the stitches bigger. And actually that's accomplished in the last row of the shape as you anchor it to pull that down a bit and make those holes bigger between the stitches. So here we go, pulling it through. When you need to begin and end a thread with trellis stitch, when you're doing this filling, you need to do that at the beginning or the end of a row. You can't do it in the middle of a row. Here I'm pointing out the mistake I made at the beginning. If you didn't catch it, I missed one of the bridge stitches there right from the beginning, but it's not really that noticeable. So we're going to pull that through. Now I'm ready to end this row, so I'm going to just go down behind that back stitch there and move down to the next back stitch. I'll straighten that out a little bit. You can see the 2 rows there. So now I'm coming up behind and I'm ready to start the next row. And the next row works just like the first row. So here you can see that the filling has, I'm working back now again from left to right and filling up the shape pretty well. And my thread is getting short, and it also needs to be untwisted. It's getting boingy, so that makes it kind of hard to work with. When your thread does that, you just need to straighten it out. If you're working on a hoop, that's easy enough. You hold your hoop up and let your needle drop, and the thread will naturally untwist. But I'm working on a frame here, and I couldn't move it, so I just use my fingers to untwist it as best as I can. So I'm going a little bit faster, speeding up the film. Show you the end of this row. And there we go. And I'm going to change that thread out now. So take it down. Now I'm ready to do the last row. And with this last row, you can see if you pull those stitches down, you're going to get a little separation between them, and you'll be able to see the weave better, if you want to call it that. You can see the holes between the stitches. Now I'm still picking up the bridge between the stitches, and here you can see the mistake at the beginning where I missed one of the bridge stitches, but that's okay. So now I'm going to pick up the back stitch on the bottom row. So I'm going to go into the bridge, then under the back stitch, inside the loop of my thread, and pull through. So here, if you lay your thread down in the shape of a G, you can go into the bridge, under the back stitch, under the working thread, inside the loop, and pull through. And if you give that a little pull, you'll pull those stitches down, and then you can straighten them out with your thread, with your needle, to sort of even them up a bit. You don't want too much of a pull on the bottom while the top is packed too tight, but we'll straighten that up in a second. So inside the bridge, under the back stitch, into the loop, and pull it through. And we're almost finished. Inside the bridge, under the back stitch, inside the loop, and pull through. Now if you're doing shapes that change in size, they get narrower, or you're doing a circle, you're going to decrease your stitches. So as the shape gets narrower, you're going to work fewer stitches in each row. But here we just have a nice rectangle, so it's pretty easy. Here we go. Inside the bridge, under the back stitch, under the working thread, inside the loop, and pull through. And now we have one more stitch. So under the bridge, there it is, under the back stitch, under the working thread, inside the loop, and pull through. And now you're finished. You're going to take your needle to the back in the corner there, and that's the trellis stitch. Straighten it up, and that's pretty good.